And I got up to Brush Lake in the middle of July and found out when I got there that they had had a big party at the Brush Lake Pavilion, and 6 people had gone out on a little boat and drowned. They had decided at the birthday party that they were all going up to the Palace Inn. I got up and said I would not have believed that there was any place in the United States that was 3 days away from a phone. I sort of covered the Girl Scouts. The badge work was well organized. We were connected with the national program, and the nosebag hikes were just traditional. You took sandwiches, and I saw my own girls doing it too. You took sandwiches, and when you sat back down for your nosebag, anything that you weren't going to eat, you carefully put in the center, and anybody else could take out of the center. Well, boy, that turned out to be a good thing, because you could take your own and eat everybody else's.
So your work with camping at local camps, you were a counselor both for 4-H and Girl Scouts? And then when you were director of camps, that was like college summers?
I started camping from the Boy Scout camp. Fort Peck offered a life-saving course one year, and the folks let me take one of their cars down, and I could drive into this life-saving. Well, I got my senior life-saving, and that would have been right at my birthday, because they realized that at 16 I could be a senior life-saver. And I got that qualification, applied to go to camp up at Brush Lake for 4-H the next month, and they wrote back. I had put that as, they call it a resume now, but that I had this, and asked me if I would go up there as the 4-H extension lifesaver. And it sounded good to me. And I got up to Brush Lake in the middle of July and found out when I got there that they had had a big party at the Brush Lake Pavilion, and 6 people had gone out on a little boat and drowned. And they had a number of the parents had just cut the kids out of camp and all because of that. But that was a grow-up experience to realize the responsibility that was involved there. But that would have been the summer of before my junior year in high school. And from then until I was 26, I spent all of my summers, it was 10 years of summers at camps. And I traveled with the 4-H extension as camp instructor, and did the music, the programs, crafts, wherever they had an opening or needed somebody, I would be doing a program there. And the second year, when I came home my first year from college, I had been counseling for the Girl Scouts, and they were short a director. So I directed the Girl Scout camp here from there until after I finished college. And I also, there was a Girl Scout camp down at Red Lodge that was pretty fabulous. And my sister Jo and I went together up to the Girl Scout camp out of Great Falls. Their pioneer unit was Rafferty, and that was a completely primitive camping. everything we made there, including the shower, was made of lashed together sticks. All of the kitchen was, it was just a very, very advanced primitive camping. And that's where I went out one day. I was the unit leader and Joe was the assistant leader. And I went out and here Joe was just chewing those kids up one side and down the other, like just gasp. And one of them had found a dead mouse and had scared the other ones with it. And it just hit Joe wrong because she'd had one of these experiences. But we got the kids straightened out. And then I remember going back into our tent and just sitting down and laugh and laugh and laugh. And what she said was, if we had done something like that, they would have killed us. But that camping was, I had a great Girl Scout troop. I assisted with the Girl Scout troop when I was in college in St. Catharines, and did the same when I was teaching in California, and then went back to the Baltimore, Maryland consul for one whole summer after I finished teaching in California, and spent the summer there with one of their very, very advanced camping. And the difference, we would have maybe, if we were lucky, 8 or 10 counselors for our 80 to 100 girls at the Pines. There they came closer to having the 100 counselors for the 80 girls. And the current counselors were just pretty much stepping on each other's toes most of the time. Very well organized, each one in their own. But the difference between having so few doing so much just seemed to make our camps more vital.
So in Maryland, how long did the girls stay at camp?
They were a 2-week session, which was pretty much what they were here too. But the camp I was with were mostly the city girls. They did have another camp there that was, I really don't know if it was totally segregated or whether it was mixed. I applied for that in the first place, but I think in their wisdom, knowing I didn't know too much about the segregation, they put me in that one, but that Deer Creek was the name of the other one.
And what was the name of the one you did?
Whippoorwill,
Of course.
of course, was right on the Severn River. The girls were all qualified canoers. I, as their counselor, had to be strapped in the canoe because I wasn't qualified in canoeing. I could swim.
I'm not sure I want to be strapped to a canoe.
Okay, there were some places in town we did not go to. And one of them was the Palace Inn. And I'm not sure exactly which of those 2 buildings up there. There was a couple up where the FFA park is now. There were a couple bars there. But one of the stories my mother told was there were 2 girls in town who were very, very restricted. One was, there were 2 mothers who were restricted. One was our mother, and the other one was Hilda Pearson, Loyal Ann's mother. And Mother told the story about the night that they all went to the birthday party over at the drugstore because Meredith's parents had the drugstore. And before really it was too late, Joe banged in the door, came to their bedroom, flung the door open, and announced, "I hope you're proud of your daughter." Closed the door and went up to bed. And when she got the whole thing out, they had decided at the birthday party that they were all going up to the Palace Inn. And so Loyal would look at Joe, and Joe would look at Loyal, and it was sort of a toss-up. But they decided that night that if the first one could get permission from her mother, then she could go back and say, Joe's mother's letting her go. But they looked at each other across the table back and forth and finally decided there wasn't too much use in going and asking Hilda. And if Hilda wouldn't let Joe go, Mrs. Rudder certainly wouldn't let Joe go. So they decided, just made the decision themselves that we are not going to the Palace Inn. And for that, Mother, you'd better be darn proud of me. Oh, birthday parties were always big, and cakes were always necessary. And if you were, ice cream was not always possible every place. And birthday gifts were pretty much a problem. You didn't have money to go and buy somebody a gift. But if you could make something, this was probably...
What kinds of things did you make?
Well, while I'm thinking of this, I found a package of, and this wasn't children's birthday parties, this would be adults, but it's a package of very nice handkerchiefs. And for when you went to a birthday party, if you were one of the ladies, and there were a lot of birthday parties given, you put a handkerchief into a card as a gift, which is very nice. And the impression I had was you saved the very nice handkerchiefs that you got for your birthday. So you would have a nice one to put in the card for the next party, and it worked. You know, you got a nice gift, you could like it very much, and I often think when I look at these cards that we pay any place from $2.50 to $6 a piece for, how much more practical that recycling the handkerchiefs and saving the nice ones for the next birthday party.
So were these handkerchiefs handmade?
No, not necessarily. They would have lace on them, or they would be embroidered and maybe hand. I suppose a lot of them would have been. They had a big printed flowers on some, and I remember those being very well liked. But it was sort of and I'm sure they just went, you were apt to get one 10 years from now that you had given 8 years before. But when you realize really what the financial situation of the whole thing was, I don't think very many of these people had a lot of money in the 20s, and those were the good years. But what they were able to do, like having a stash of handkerchiefs, we can have a party, somebody will be able to make a cake and get together and do this.
We were able to get by, and it was just kind of, we're all in it together, huh?
Yeah, they're...
So you finished college in Bozeman what year?
53.
And then you came...
Then the first year I went to California. And at that time, going to California was like what going to Europe is today. I mean, just, that was a big one.
And you taught
2 years.
in a...
Oh, okay. You would like me to talk is what you're saying here. Well, this isn't about me, it's about the,
I know, but
you would like
It
it on.
is about you as well, Peggy.
I would like to hear the history of your life from the time you finished college until you married, the work you did and the places
Okay.
you lived, how you ended up in Germany.
No, you don't want to, you don't
The
want
short
that first,
version.
the short version, yes.
So you graduated from college.
College. Okay, they had interviewers for graduates, which I'm sure they still have. The one in the education, when I went to college, went to St. Catherine's and I finished 2 years of occupational therapy there. And when I graduated from Bozeman, I had my degree in art with a teaching option in art. And then I also had an education option for English and art and PE. So in this interview, going through it, he had a position in a sanitarium out of Bakersfield, California, and the occupational therapy, the medical part that I had made me more qualified than most for that, but he'd already offered the job to somebody else. And I got to camp again. I camped all summers at Maiden out of Lewistown on the other side of a creek. And the only phone was on the dry side of the creek. And okay, he called back to say that she had taken a job in Washington and would I take the one in California. And that's how I got the California job. But it was a little more complicated because he had called me at home, I was not at home. Mother had called my aunt in Lewistown, and she knew where this camp was, and she had called the rancher who lived on the other side of the creek, and they finally had to take me across the creek to the ranch to take the phone call there, and there were 3 calls there when I got there, but I did get the one I needed. But when I did get to California, we were a little late and got into the big auditorium. We were on the Kern County faculty, orientation for all teachers. The man got up and said, I would not have believed that there was any place in the United States that was 3 days away from a phone. And I knew exactly who he was talking about. But I stayed in California for 2 years because at that time you were advised to stay your first job for 2 years or they'd think you'd been fired.
And so what age of students did you have?
I had all ages of students. From little Julie Apodaca, who was a brilliant little Mexican girl who had TB. And she came in and I asked her what grade she was in, and she didn't know, but she thought her friend had been in the 3rd grade this year. So we did the 3rd grade work. She went home in the spring and came back all excited because her friend was only in the 3rd grade now and she was going up to the 4th. So we skipped the whole year there. I had men who wanted to, I remember I had one algebra class and that took something to stay ahead of him on. At that time, in order to become a citizen, you had to speak English. So the other teacher did all the English, preparing them for this naturalization. Most of the students, or most of the residents in the sanatorium were either the Oklahoma
Depression.
depression people, who had been, TB was a disease of the lower nutrition people, or a lot of the Mexican people. And they were the ones who wanted their citizenship. But the others wanted jobs, and I had one whole class of maybe 5 or 6 women who wanted to get their CNA. And for that, they needed biology. So I had them in a class of biology, and some of them, not all of them, but some of them were employees at the sanitarium who wanted to move up in the medical system there. And I had some older men who were just interested in reading literature, something like that, and a guided program on that. But it was pretty much, except for those 2 groups, individual teaching. Taking one student through the beginning algebra so he might be able to get his high school diploma. And 2 years there was very, very good. Time seemed to go, time just seemed to be as it is now. It's here, it's on, we're living this moment. And fast or slow doesn't make that much difference.